Hi everybody, Rated Rogue here, and for today's video, I wanted to talk about my cats. I will let you know if you are expecting to see cats in this video. Unfortunately, that is not going to happen. They are busy doing their things. I will try to get some pictures of them up online today, but no promises. I just, I've been a cat person since I was young. My the last year that my parents were married was when I got my first cat, and it was the summer before the school year, and it was a very interesting scenario wherein we went out back. Found a whole bunch of kittens in our backyard, discovered that the mother had given birth in our back shed. There were 4 of them. We collected them up, went and got some food, got litter and everything, took care of them. My mom, doing the responsible thing, started looking around in the neighborhood to see if the kittens belonged to anyone. And wasn't getting any responses. So we kind of hung out with them, and each of us kind of claimed our own. I fell in love with an all-gray cat that I had named Smokey, and he was my best friend for many, many years. I had him all the way up until I left for the Army. He then stayed with my parents, or my dad, while I was in training and everything. Later on, after I was out of training and was actually at my duty station, I picked him up, and then he moved with me from Texas to Virginia, and then eventually went back to live with my dad as we found it difficult to find housing arrangements in Virginia. And at that point it was already looking like we were going to be moving to Florida, and I did not want to move him that far. But he was my constant companion through my parents' divorce. He was with me all the way through high school, and all the way up until we got to the very end of our time in Virginia. So we moved from Virginia to Florida with my wife's 2 cats, who we also moved from Texas to Virginia. That would be Eloise and Q. Eloise and Q were utterly inseparable. They were absolutely best friends. They were not litter mates, but they were practically sisters. They had a very interesting dynamic. Q was extremely affectionate and very dumb. I don't say this to besmirch Q. Q was one of the sweetest cats I have ever met in my entire life. Basically a lap cat who would snuggle you absolutely to death. But really, really slow as far as relating to the physical world. Would regularly run into glass doors, had all sorts of problems judging distances when jumping. Very, very clumsy cat is what I'm trying to say, and not very bright. You could hold up one hand, and she would come over for pets, and then you could hold up the other hand, this hand already petting her, and she would go over to the other hand because it was the one that she could see. Not very smart. Then there was Eloise, and Eloise is the fierce warrior cat. Eloise was basically the alpha of every group that she was in. Very, very strong cat, very smart cat, very dominant cat, absolutely in love with Q. The 2 of them were constant companions, and never did anything without each other, all the way up until Q passed away. And they went with us from Texas all the way to Virginia, all the way to Florida, and then all the way to Kentucky. Neither one of them are with us anymore, Q or Eloise. Q died of cancer, and then Eloise, after many attempts to save her life, we did chemotherapy, we had her thyroid removed, we did all sorts of stuff, eventually also succumbed to cancer a couple of years after that. So neither one of them are with us anymore other than in spirit. I loved both of those cats, even though they were my wife's cats before she even met me. And it was very sad to not have them with us anymore. They did not, as I said, make it out of Kentucky, so they didn't make it here to where we are. So that brings me to Bones. So to rewind a little bit, Smokey went back to live with my dad when we just before we moved to Florida. Once we got to Florida, we were a 2-cat household for a little while until we took one of our cats in to the vet, and in the veterinarian's office was a cat up for adoption that happened to be a solid gray cat. Already had a name, in this case Bones. Was actually found in a cat carrier behind a Smoky Bones restaurant, and just turned into the vet because they didn't know what to do with it. He was not exactly the spitting image of Smokey, but very similar in appearance. Not similar in temperament, however. Smokey was very territorial, and very much wanted to be the alpha cat in any situation he was in, which put him into lots of conflicts with Eloise, who just was the alpha cat. That's just the way it was. Eloise didn't take any crap from anyone. Bones was much more interested in just being my cat. Q loved everyone. Eloise was very much devoted to Q and my wife. Bones was mine, and he was my first cat as an adult. And he is still with us. He is now a cranky old man who has issues keeping his food down. But he's absolutely in love with me. He does not like pretty much anyone else in the house. And lately he just kind of keeps to himself. It's one of the reasons why it'll be very hard for me to get them on video, is that Bones is probably currently sleeping somewhere that I can't get to. That or he's eating. One of those two things. Those are his favorite activities, so it doesn't surprise me. He sleeps with me every night, however, he creeps into bed late, so as not to have to deal with Raphael at all. He's not a big fan of Raphael. Raphael is way too loud and way too boisterous for Bones at this point, and so he's not very excited about that. But Bones was a rescue from the vet's office, and they were overjoyed to hand him off to us. They knew how well we took care of our other cats, so they had absolutely no qualms in letting us take him as well. We took him home for a trial, and he basically got along with the other cats. They didn't have any problems with him, and he mostly stuck to me or areas that they weren't. So they ended up getting along pretty well. As I said, they moved with us from Florida to Kentucky, all three of them, and Bones then later on moved all the way from Kentucky to Portland. So he's been from Florida to Portland with a 9-year stop in Kentucky. He's a very old cat now. I don't know how much longer he will be with us. I also don't know if I will be getting another cat for myself after him. We shall see. Right now I'm very attached to him, and he's not doing so well, and I don't know if I can go through that too many more times. We are a 3-cat household currently. We have 2 additional cats. Their names are Tatsu and Hilton. Tatsu and Hilton are both rescues as well. We did not name either one of them. Hilton was a rescue that was living with friends of ours in the Cincinnati, Kentucky area, who, when they moved to had to move to Washington State suddenly due to work, we took Tatsu in, and her name originally was supposed to be Kotatsu, like the heated Japanese lap pillow. It was shortened to Tatsu, meaning dragon, because she is not the friendliest of cats. She's very affectionate and very... she has a desire to be around humans, but she does not know how to cat. Or she knows how to cat too well, depending on how you look at it. She's very prone to biting and scratching. Sudden movements set her off. She is not the brightest cat, but not nearly as slow as our poor Q was. She likes to chew plastic, which is very weird. She's a destroyer of charging cables. My first encounter with her at my friend's place was her eating through guest's iPad cable, iPad charging cable, the first night they were staying there. So yeah, so Q is not the brightest and a little bit destructive. Not so much with claws. She doesn't really claw the furniture or anything like that, but if you leave plastic bags sitting out, you will come back to a bunch of Tatsu tooth marks all over them. So she's not my cat. She's not really my wife's cat. She just kind of lives here. Originally, when we took her in Kentucky, we had a roommate, and our roommate was the one who took her in. However, when we moved here to Portland, we discovered that we weren't going to be able to get a place that was large enough for all of us and our roommate. The going rate of property and apartments here is more expensive, obviously, than it was in Kentucky. So our roommate from Kentucky chose not to move and instead moved back to Oklahoma. Unfortunately for us, we had already moved Tatsu here, so she's ours now. I don't have any, issues with Tatsu, but I also don't have any great affection for her. I take care of her. She's not a bad cat. She's just not my cat and never really has been. But I'm glad that she's off the street, and I'm glad that we were able to at least give her a home. The other one is Hilton, and well, we were in Kentucky. I had a cat, and my roommate had a cat, and my wife's cats both passed away. And she didn't initially want another cat. She wanted to just say, no, we're done with that. We're taking care of Raphael. We've got all of this stuff going on. We don't need another cat. But it was recommended by her therapist that she get a therapy animal, and Tatsu is definitely not a therapy animal, and Bones is not a therapy animal for my wife. So we went looking around at the various shelters in the area. We found a cat rescue place in Cincinnati that's fantastic, and we went there and hung out with all of the kitties, and one of them in particular was drawn to my wife and was extremely pleasant. Wonderful personality. And that cat happened to be named Hilton because she was found in the parking lot of a Hilton hotel. So again, we didn't name her either. So Hilton is my wife's emotional therapy animal, which is why we were able to have 3 cats in an apartment in Portland, where most of them limit it to 2, because they cannot count Hilton against that limit. I am very happy with this fact because Hilton is a sweetheart. Hilton is absolutely one of the most pleasant animals I have ever met in my entire life. She's completely inoffensive. She has no problems. She's content to just snuggle and be petted. She doesn't attack things. She doesn't eat things. She doesn't throw up all over the place. She doesn't, like, she's not picky. She's just the most universally appealing cat I have ever met in my life. She has a little club foot on one of her back feet, which she's had as long as she's been alive, as far as the rescue shelter knows. But she's absolutely wonderful, and is the youngest of all of our cats at this point. So she's the baby of the family, and she adores my wife, and my wife adores her, and it's a very fantastic relationship. But that's where we are now, is Bones the old man, Tatsu the middle-aged cat who doesn't know how to cat, and Hilton the loveliest cat of them all. And it works for us right now. As I said, I don't know if I'm going to be getting another cat once Bones passes on. I don't know if that's something that I personally want to do. I think next thing that will probably happen will be Raphael getting a pet of his own, because none of our animals currently are his. You know, Tatsu is too uneven of temperament. Bones doesn't like loud children, and Hilton is very much Molly's cat. So maybe that's the direction we will go in. One caveat I would like to add at the end of the video, for anybody wondering, I have absolutely no problem with dogs. I grew up around dogs in basically every household that wasn't my own. Dogs are fantastic. I love them very, very much. They are a little rambunctious, and between me and my energy and Raphael and his energy, I would not be surprised if Raphael chooses to move in the direction of dogs once he starts wanting a pet of his own rather than cats. But I personally have grown up with cats. They've been my companions through all of the hard times that brought me to this point, and I love them all. They're my friends and my companions, and I'm gonna miss all of them when they're gone, but the 3 that we have are still gonna be here for a little while, and I'm gonna enjoy that while it lasts. Anyway, on that note, I'm gonna go ahead and cut this one off, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow.